We now continue with Smurf.
So, around 2011, it was my senior year of high school, and we decided to throw a kick-ass Christmas party at my buddy Frank's house. We got enough alcohol to make Charlie Sheen blush and invited everyone we could. Now, the appeal of Frank's house is that he lives about 5 miles away from anyone else in the middle of the woods in this amazing cabin. His dad created some sort of more efficient solar-powered lantern. I showed up to set shit up around 6 p.m. The news said that there would be a chance of snow flurries that evening. We were not too worried, and nobody said that they planned on cancelling, so we went along, setting everything up. Sometime around 7, a couple of close friends showed up, including Maggie, the girl I was talking to at the time. I helped them get some cases of beer out of the back of a truck when I got a strange feeling. Everything was really quiet. Granted, it was late fall/early winter, so not many animals were outside, but it was still a strange feeling. I looked around and saw a large shadow move in the woods. I did not get a good look, but I was pretty freaked. About 20 seconds later, the feeling of dread left, and I shrugged everything off and took the booze back into the house. The party was picking up around 10, and I was starting to feel a little bit buzzed. We had the music pumping and everything, but there was a weird feeling going around. Some people said they felt weird walking up to Frank's driveway. You can only park 5 cars in his driveway. Everyone else had to park in front of the horse stables at the bottom of a hill and walk about a quarter of a mile. No one really paid much attention after a few drinks though, so it did not ruin the party. I was sitting in the hot tub talking to Maggie. This guy had a hot tub in his basement in a room surrounded by windows. When I saw snow starting to fall fairly heavily, there was already a fine dusting of snow on the ground, and a few sober people started thinking if it was time to head out. I did not think much of it. I planned on getting hammered and staying the night anyways, so I leaned back and popped open another Sam Adams. At 10:45, the power cut off. This obviously put quite the damper on the party. However, Frank had gas fireplaces for heat and light. Some people left, but there must have been around 30 people still partying. The bad news was that the hot tub did not hot tub when the power was off, so I climbed out. No sooner had my feet hit the ground when I saw this figure through one of the windows. The solar lamp still worked and cast a little bit of light around the house. It moved through the snow like a hunched over man, but it had a strange, loping walk, something like an ostrich. It suddenly stopped and looked at me through the window, and I swear I could make out what looked like teeth before the thing turned away and bounded off on 4 legs. I looked over at Maggie, but she was too busy giggling and trying to get her friend Lindsay out of the tub. I shook it off as nothing more than a bear that had still not gone in for hibernation and downed my newly opened beer. The party was still going pretty strong upstairs despite the lack of music, but Frank was not satisfied. He asked me and our friend Jonah to help him get the backup generator outside up and running. I told him to let me grab another beer to help kill the stupid brain cells so that I would be more useful. I won't lie, I was still a little bit freaked out about the large thing I had seen. But without the generator, there was no music, and without music, I could not dance with my wiener pressed against Maggie's booty. So we set out for his dad's shed, where the generator was. It was partially solar, partially gas-powered, and as such, it needed to be turned on manually. The shed was about 50 yards away from the house, so that it could provide heating to the horse stables. About halfway there, this fresh chill came over me. It wasn't the wind or the cold or the snow, because the alcohol was making me feel warm until then. No, this cold started at the base of my neck and worked its way down my spine. I looked around with the flashlight, and I could swear I saw a set of eyes glowing near a bush next to the house. Jonah was looking around too, and seemed just as scared as I was, but Frank trudged on, probably much too drunk to notice anything out of the ordinary. We were right next to the shed, when I heard a sound that makes me get goosebumps thinking about it today. It sounded much like a rabbit screaming, but deeper, and with more of an edge to it, if you know what I mean. It sounded like it came from our right side. The house was behind us. To our left was a downward sloping hill, leading to the fenced-in horse area. In front of us was the shed, with trees behind it curving right and running parallel to the house and driveway. By the time I unfroze, Frank grabbed me and started dragging me towards the house. We made it up the steps. The house had a first level, with 2 floors above it, and a basement that was below ground facing the road, but above ground in the back and back into the party. No one had heard the sound other than a couple making out on the porch. Someone had plugged an iPod into a boombox, so there was music bumping, and that combined with people talking and the massive amounts of alcohol had resulted in ignorance of the scream from outside. Our entrance, however, was not ignored. Someone turned the music down and we explained what happened. The couple on the porch backed us up. Everyone just kind of blew it off. They had not heard the demon roar, so they were not freaked out at all. It was around this time that I realized that Jonah was not in the house. I spun around and looked for him, but I could not see him. I asked Frank, and he said he thought he was right behind us. This asshole Colby, Maggie's ex, started making fun of us, saying that we were just afraid of the dark, or that we were too stupid to turn on the generator. Before I had a chance to defend myself, another scream pierced the night, the same demonic screech we heard outside, this time coming from behind us towards the shed. This time we all heard it. A bunch of people turned white, and someone screamed. Suddenly it was mass chaos. People were running everywhere, some upstairs, some out the front door. I just kind of stayed in the kitchen and tried to get my head together, but Mr. Sam Adams and his partner, Admiral Nelson, we were young and it was cheap rum, made it pretty hard. The next 5 minutes seemed like an hour. We heard a car start, then a few more, but some people who ran outside streamed back into the house. Some idiot's Prius was stuck in the driveway and could not go up the hill, and someone else's truck got stuck in the grass a bit ahead of her, and the driveway was blocked. The other side had a creek running through it. After a few minutes, another scream erupted, sounding pretty close by. Again, everyone freaked, but this time they ran upstairs and I followed. We congregated in the main room on the 2nd floor, which had a pool table, pinball machine, and other cool stuff. There were around 15 people in the house at this time, but over the next few minutes about 10 more people joined us. Some people elected to stay in their cars and try to get out, but the snow was getting deep and the driveway had not been salted. It was Derek, a football teammate of mine, who finally got everyone to shut up. We started trying to figure out what was making the sound. We all thought it was a rabbit that was hurt, or maybe a coyote, but we were all thinking that it was something else. Something beastly. I brought up the issue of Jonah. We had no idea where he was, and he could be hurt and freezing. Derek and Frank elected to go with me to find him. I never volunteered, but as soon as Maggie said it was too dangerous and we should not go, I knew I had to. Colby said he would go with us, probably for the same reason as me, and his friend Blake agreed to go also. Frank led the 4 of us across the hall to his dad's man cave and handed us some gear. He handed me a Remington 798. I think it was a Remington hunting rifle, I know that, and it shot .30. Colby had a Mossberg shotgun of some sort, Derek the same shotgun, and he and Blake each had pistols. Looking back, it was a bad idea. Us, drunk, scared idiots with guns, but it made sense in the moment. We made our way off his back porch and towards the shack. Frank led the way with the shotgun. Colby and I were right behind him. Blake was halfway up Colby's ass, and Derek was guarding our rear. Frank led us up to the shed and called out softly for Jonah. We did not hear anything, so we started around the other side of the shed. We heard a rustling to our right, and before I knew what happened, Blake had unloaded his damn pistol. I immediately flipped my ever-loving shit and hit him in the face and gut. Colby grabbed me and told me to stop, but even he looked pissed. Frank grabbed Blake's pistol, made sure it was emptied and on safety, and put it in his waistband. Blake was pissed that we took his gun, but damn it, he could have shot Jonah if it had been him. Another scream ripped across the darkness, this time coming from the direction of the house. We started moving back around the shed, but we did not see anything once we had the house in sight. Blake started walking back towards the house when we heard a new noise. It sounded like someone crying. The sobbing was coming from the stables, and we began to make our way down the hill carefully. Suddenly, the crying changed to a cackling laugh, something almost like a cute giggle, but like it was coming from a dog or a bear. I have never been so unnerved, not even the first time I heard the scream. I clutched the rifle so hard my hand started to hurt, but made my way down the hill, closer to the stables, closer to the laugh. It was at the bottom of the hill, about 20 yards from the stable, that I almost lost my courage. This smell erupted in my nostrils, something similar to the time a raccoon died in the locker room at school over the weekend in the middle of August. Colby immediately doubled over and puked his brains out. I won't lie, I got a smug feeling of satisfaction from it. In between retches from Colby, I heard the sobbing again. I pointed it out to Frank, but his will had finally broken. He told me to go check it out. He would make sure whatever was out there did not sneak up behind me. I pleaded with Derek to come with me. He finally conceded and followed me. The way the stable is set out, there are 4 gates on each side for the horses to come in along, with a main door that goes in between each row for the handler to feed them and shit like that. I made my way towards the main door, but once I got there, it was already open. I shined my light inside. The only thing I could see was Jonah lying in the middle of the hallway, between the stable spread eagle, his head turned to the side. That was when I noticed movement to my left. Derek yelled. I probably did too, but I don't remember. I turned towards the movement, and my light caught an arm covered in fur and snow, and what I'm guessing is a leg. I didn't think. I just pulled the trigger, not even aiming properly. The boom brought me back to reality. I missed whatever that thing was and immediately turned to run. However, I was still half drunk and it was snowing, so I slipped and fell hard on my side. I heard something grunt and run towards me, but whatever it was leaped over me and chased after Derek. The thing screamed the scream of Satan and hit Derek hard. Now, Derek is an all-conference linebacker. He went to sit on the bench at UNC Chapel Hill, but he was a big guy. This thing made him look small. It hit him and his feet left the ground. I gathered myself up and slid the bolt on my rifle back and forward, chambering another round. The behemoth looked at me as the clack of the bolt resonated through the quiet snow-covered valley. This is the part of the story where Derek says I stood tall and shot the motherfucker twice, center of mass, and hit it with the butt of my rifle, chasing it away, no problem. I let him tell that story because it has gotten me laid. However, he was knocked out, Blake was halfway up the hill, and Frank and Colby were too drunk and tired to move from the other side of the stable. In reality, my finger slipped on the trigger, and I hit the beast in what would be the shoulder of a human. I am not familiar with beastology, but I am going to presume this is also its shoulder. The damn thing stopped and released that cackle that we heard earlier. It moved into the light, and I got my only good look at it, however short, and panic and drunk blinded that look was. It literally leaped the 8 or so yards between me and it. However, I threw myself at the ground, and the damn thing soared over me. I heard it skid in the snow, and I turned around. I slid the bolt again and put another round. However, I did not even get a chance to aim. This time, the thing swept its paw and hit me in the side. All of the air left my lungs, and I just kind of laid there. I could smell the putrid stench radiating above me to the right. I sensed it reaching towards me, but I cannot be sure, since I was about to pass out. I don't remember how, but I lifted the gun and just shot. Yet another lucky hit. I don't know where it hit, but I heard the damn scream. I must have been lying there for a few minutes, because by the time Derek and Frank reached me, I had a bit of snow covering me. They helped me up. Colby stood to the side, trying to look tough and proud despite puking earlier. My sides hurt, and I would later find out I had a few bruised ribs. Derek had quite the bump on his head and a concussion, but he was fine. We slowly made our way back up to the stable to help Jonah. What I saw in the barn scars me. We usually leave out this part of the story, but I will tell you fellow X-Files because I know that you will want to know. Jonah was lying in the center of the aisle. His leg was turned in an awkward direction. He was knocked out and covered in blood. And there was a bone lying next to him, and another next to it, and another leading into a stall. There we found the remains of a horse, ripped almost in half, blood lining the stall, bones thrown around. The other horses were silent. Frank was in tears as he ran to each stall. Of the 8 horses in the stable, 1 had been eaten completely. Another was the one that we found next to Jonah. 2 more had died with no markings, possibly of fright or shock or whatever. We decided to get Jonah and get the hell out of there, back to the house. Colby and Frank lifted him between them as Derek and I led the way back. We arrived at the house. Everyone was deathly quiet. Fear had sobered all of us up. The silence was broken as everyone asked us what was up. None of us could answer until Derek told the story. Someone grabbed a towel to clean us up. It was only then that I saw the filth on the side of my body the beast had hit. Derek was also covered, and Frank grabbed some clothes, and we changed Jonah out of the blood-soaked rags he was wearing. Some people had called emergency services as soon as Blake went crazy with the gun, but we were quite a ways out, and the storm was insane. No one was prepared. It was not until 2 that afternoon that police and ambulance showed up. The rest of the night/morning, it was about 1 by the time we came back, and near 2 by the time we were cleaned and the story was told, was a blur. Blake never came back to the cabin apparently, but no one had the balls to go back out there. Not even his girlfriend or Colby told to us. I drank a bit to numb my ribs and also to gain some courage. We heard sounds in the woods by the cabin all night, but no more screams. It was around 5 o'clock in the morning when Jonah awoke. He was shaking and jittery, but he told us the story. After the scream by the shed, Jonah ran for the stable. It was the closest shelter he could see, and he was panicked. He thought Frank and I were right behind him, though we had made our way to the house. Halfway down the hill he slipped, breaking his leg. He had been knocked out in the fall, but was awakened by something, dragging him. He only got a few glimpses, but said it looked like Satan fucked a gorilla, though he said he saw a snout like a horse or a dog, and its feet seemed too small for its body, and its ears went straight up from its head. The thing dragged him into the barn. The horses went nuts and started kicking and neighing, but the beast roared and they fell silent. The thing leapt over the stall door and slaughtered a horse. The others merely kept as far away as possible. Jonah lay in the corner of the stable crying. Every now and then he said the monster would look at him while eating. He could not really see much. The thing would not really stay in direct light, and it would cry also, but much throatier and deeper. However, over the next few minutes, it was almost a perfect imitation. Every now and then it would throw a bone at Jonah, and when it hit, the thing would do the cackle, each time sounding less like a demon and more like a girl. After it finished the first horse, it went to the second and killed it as well. This time though, it kept throwing the meat over to Jonah, but Jonah was freaking out. He heard gunshots and tried to crawl away, but the damn thing jumped at him, and the next thing he remembers is waking up on the couch. Everything about Jonah's story gives me the chills, especially the part about it crying and laughing. We waited in the house. Others streamed in throughout the morning as they abandoned their cars. It wasn't until 11 a.m. that Blake finally showed up. He was literally blue and shivering. He would be treated for hypothermia, I think, but I did not keep up with him much after that night. He would not tell us what happened, but he kept saying, "It's still there," or "It talks like me," or "It knows my name." I do know he was treated in a mental hospital. Colby said he went nuts and is afraid of trees. The police showed up around 2. They were skeptical of our story and accused us of doing drugs. However, when we showed them the horses, they believed us partially. They ruled it out as a bear, and while we got a slap on the wrist for underage drinking, no one was charged. Derek, Jonah, Frank, Colby, Blake and I were taken to the hospital. We talked to some forest rangers and a few other people, and while the rangers turned pale at our descriptions, they stuttered out that it was probably a bear, and then they left. I still don't know what was out there. It took me almost a year to work up the courage to go into the woods. But since then I have taken to hiking, camping, and a bit of urban exploration. I mean, after that night, there can't be anything scarier than that, right? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I discovered this church by chance. I was waiting in line at a village store when I overheard a group of local drunks sitting at a nearby high table. They were talking about a wealthy businessman who decided to atone for his sins by restoring the church in Solovstovo. He was going to fund it all himself, without asking the villagers for any money. The conversation shifted to politics, and they started ranting about the communists who had destroyed the church. They cursed Stalin and Lenin, blaming them for taking away the faith of good people, turning them into atheists, and claiming that Russia's downfall was because they'd forgotten about Christ. When it was my turn, I asked for a pack of cigarettes, bread, and some pasta, paid, and then I headed home. After placing the groceries on the table, I opened the pack of cigarettes, grabbed one, and called my grandfather to join me for a smoke in the yard. I lit up, handed him the lighter, and we sat down on a bench. A minute later, I asked him why I had not heard anything about the church in Solovstovo. He looked at me, surprised. "Why would you need to know about that church?" he asked. I told him it seemed like an interesting architectural landmark. He scoffed and said it was not a temple, but a breeding ground for ignorance and superstition, and that it was a good thing it was torn down. I told him that I'd heard they were restoring it. He seemed taken aback and said, "Restore it? There is nothing to restore. It has already been destroyed beyond repair. They'd have to build it from scratch." I told him I was going to check it out today. He spat, said it was not worth seeing, put out his cigarette, and went inside to watch TV. I shrugged, grabbed a flashlight, another pack of cigarettes, and switched my galoshes for sneakers before heading to Solovstovo. It was a long walk, 3 kilometers down a dirt road. I told my grandfather I would be back before dark. Solovstovo was quiet. People were either inside their homes or working in their gardens. There were no young people around, which was why I had not been here before. The church stood on the outskirts, perched on a hill, its ruined bell tower looming over the village. Its crooked cross pointed westward, a reminder of the Bolsheviks' destruction. I gazed at the crooked cross for a moment before heading toward the church. Next to it was a cemetery, a pile of stone crosses, worn down by time and covered in soft moss, stood among the graves. Some tombstones had sunken, and the ground had cracked open, as if the dead were trying to claw their way out. There was also a chapel nearby. The cross had been ripped off, probably taken somewhere, as there was no trace of it. Without hesitation, the communists had filled the grave in the chapel with concrete. Pretty neat, I'd say. The main entrance to the church was collapsed, so I had to climb in through a window. It was getting dark, and there was barely any light inside, so I turned on my flashlight and began exploring, hoping to find something interesting. My first goal was the altar, because, as everyone knows, the priests hid their trinkets and their icons there before the Reds arrived. If I was lucky, maybe I would find something worth taking. Shining my flashlight around, I noticed the walls were covered in graffiti. On the paintings that depicted the lives of saints, someone had burned the saints' eyes with cigarette butts, scratched on mustaches and beards, and some just stood there, bewildered, with crude drawings of genitalia scrawled over them. I looked up. The ceiling was blackened by smoke. Had they been starting fires here, or something like that? Whatever. Then I saw it. The altar and the iconostasis, but it was empty. I moved the beam of light across the room and almost missed a neat pile of bricks. From the wall, an eerie old man with a staff stared back at me, his expression foreboding. Damn, they had really nailed the realism of it. No one had even bothered to draw over it. Ugh. I lit a cigarette and started searching for the hatch to the basement. Then I realized, outside. The basement entrance was on the outside. The once sturdy, iron-bound door was torn off its hinges and now lay next to the entrance. The flashlight flickered. I tapped it in my hand, flicked the cigarette away, and went inside. Navigating through the rubble of broken bricks and trash, I made my way toward the altar, hoping to discover where the clever priests had hidden their treasures. The low ceiling felt like it was closing in on me, and that image of the old man in a hood, holding his staff, stuck with me. Damn, that was creepy. After walking to the end, I paused to think about what to do next. Of course, many people had come here before me, and probably searched every inch of the place. If there was any stash, it had likely already been found and emptied. I lit another cigarette and sat down against the wall, leaning back. Suddenly, something sharp pressed painfully against my back. I jumped up and shone my flashlight. To my surprise, someone had mounted an old fork into the wall. There must have been a flower pot there. I thought to myself, I should take this with me. I set the flashlight on a brick, grabbed the fork, and began to pry it loose. I felt it give way. In an instant, I was sitting on the floor, holding the fork, and staring at a gaping hole in the wall. I'd practically torn a piece of the wall out. Cursing under my breath, I threw the bricks aside, stood up, grabbed the flashlight, and peered inside. A heavy, stagnant air seeped from the opening, thick with dust and the smell of decay. I stepped inside. I walked about 20 meters down a narrow passage and reached a wooden door with a lock hanging off of it. Well, a lock was no obstacle for me. I picked up a decent-sized rock from the ground and began pounding away at the lock. After a few minutes, the lock fell to the floor with a dull thud. I pulled the door open and shone my light inside. What I saw shocked me. The room was large, about 10 by 10 meters. My flashlight did not even reach the far wall. Dust danced in the beam of the light, swirling around. I stepped forward cautiously. There were no icons, no gold, but along the walls, piles of skulls were stacked like mountains. I took a few more steps, looking around, and saw that the skulls stretched across the room. There were no other bones, just skulls. The dust settled. I froze, staring at the macabre sight, and something inside me shifted. I suddenly lost all desire to continue searching. Carefully, I backed away, exited the passage, and quietly closed the door behind me. I needed to get the hell out of there. Outside, the sky had darkened. The moon was peeking through the clouds, casting a ghostly light across the grave crosses. A cold wind blew, biting through my clothes and chilling me to the bone. Standing there, looking at the crosses bathed in the pale moonlight, I had a strange feeling that I needed to drink. Vodka, lots of it. The more I drank, the better I felt.